Oh, it's just a
Hi,
distraction.
welcome. This is the CaddyInfo Cadillac conversation. We do these on Thursday night when we have a quorum available. I have tonight with me Cadillac Jim,
Howdy.
and Texas Jim is on.
Good evening, everyone.
And a shout out to our friend Air Mike, that I'm hoping, Mike, that you're going to try and join us, or if you're not set up, then join us another day soon. And of course, we're missing our friend Tim Carroll. He's usually in the paint shop or busy fixing Cadillacs and doesn't log in. I hadn't seen our friend Vinny lately, so Vinny, if you're out there, stop back by. Okay, so and there's about half a dozen other people I invite every week who don't manage to who don't always manage to log in. We had a lot of big news last week. We didn't get to talk, so let's talk about the CT6. What's you guys' impression of Cadillac's new ultra luxury CT6?
I can't get my mind off of that sound system.
The 34 speaker, awesome new sound system with digital signal processing, so that you can
do anything.
Who knows?
Yeah, using the floor pan for the woofer is what got me.
Now, so that's not, I guess, the number one thing that I'm interested in out of everything they told us, besides the fact that the car is lighter. And so now I want an ATS made with the same approach that they used with the. So if this is a 122-inch wheelbase, so it's 16-inch wheelbase, a little greater than the ATS, then the ATS should be, 400 pounds lighter than this car is, and it's not. And so if you use this technology for an ATS, can I have, a 3,200-pound ATS, please?
I think you could. It's just the year they did the design. This car is designed 2 years later than the ATS.
And it somewhat greater expense available.
Yeah. But I think the big thing is, the year it was designed, the material selection. Aluminum is much more, increasingly valuable year by year. The lower energy cost means lower cost of aluminum because it's produced by electrolysis. And so then the carbon fiber techniques, their usability in different applications, all these things are improving year by year rapidly. So I think that's most of the answer right there. Also, I'm not sure that weight does scale directly with wheelbase. It seems like it would, because the middle of the car sort of has the mean mass for most of the car, now that the drive lines don't dominate everything like they used to in the old days.
Texas Jim, the CT6, what do you think?
Yeah.
I really like it. I like the looks of it. And I like the long wheelbase. It should have a good ride if they don't put wagon wheels on it.
Yeah.
If they put a decent sized wheel and a tire with some decent sidewall to it, it would have a nice smooth ride. And with a magnetic suspension, it would still be very controllable. So I like the way it's starting out, and I really like the looks of it.
I'm thinking that they have 20-inch wheels on it. I suspect that that's what it has, but I'll have to go look at that.
Well, if the tires are at least 50 profile and they have at least 7-inch rims, they can still get a good ride out of it. I mean, my front tires are 40 profile, my rear 35 profile, but I got 9-inch rims on the front and 9.5 on the rear, and my wheels are 19 inches. So, and my ride is I've never had any complaints, and I've been riding in some friends' cars that are similar vintage, recent models, and my car tends to ride better than theirs, and theirs are sedans and grocery getters and stuff,
But certainly this car is designed to have a luxurious ride, not a floaty ride.
Right.
But it is a luxury car.
Yeah, as opposed to mine, which is more of a sports car.
Yes.
So I expect great things for the ride of that, and handling as well.
Now, where are you guys predicting that the price will start?
$60K.
So we got a 4-cylinder, a 6-cylinder, and a twin turbo. So let's do the easy one. Where do you think the 4-cylinder turbo will start? 60K?
58.
58?
Mm-hmm.
Jim?
The 4-cylinder?
Yeah.
4-cylinder CT6, CT6-4.
It might start just under 60, 59.9.
Mm-hmm.
But I think a well-optioned CT6 is going to be 80.
Yeah.
Now the equivalent of, because they're selling this, they said don't compare us to the long wheelbase 7 series, but they want to be compared to the 5 series. So is there a BMW 728? Is that the small engine version of the BMW?
Yeah, because the big one is a 760.
Mm-hmm.
So let's see if BMW, they start with the 740. Let's see what BMW suggests the 740 cost. I'm sorry, I should have, oh, $74,000. $74,000. So do you think that is where we would expect the 4-cylinder?
No, that
No.
doesn't. 70. That puppy.
If they've got any sense, they'll bring it in less than the BMW.
Mm-hmm.
No, there's no evidence that they have any sense.
I know. I said if they do, they will bring it in less than the BMW.
Yeah, because they see that as a matter of prestige, right? To be able to show that they can sell the CT6 for exactly the same price as the BMW or the Mercedes.
Well, then they're a fool. Because you need to sell some first and get some market share. You need to make some market penetration. And as of right now, they haven't sold one, obviously, because it's not out yet. But it's not going to just be flying off the shelves. They thought the ATS would do the same thing.
Yes, we were going to sell $5,000 a month.
So they brought it in priced at, with a small BMW.
Right.
And it ain't worked.
Now,
don't keep doing the same thing over and over and over.
The BMW 740i sells for $74,000. Would it be easy to remember if they brought the CT6 out for $60,000?
Well, it depends on. It's got to have a comparable drivetrain as the car with a comparable price. I don't think the BMW 7 Series comes with a 4-cylinder.
No, they've got a 3-liter 6-cylinder twin turbo in the 740.
Well, that's roughly comparable to the turbo V6.
Right.
No, it's comparable to the normal V6.
In horsepower?
Yeah.
So it's a little over 300 horse.
No,
right.
That's what my boy's got in that little tiny Z4 he's got.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Twin turbo inline 6.
Mm-hmm.
Now so I think the 740i is the short wheelbase version and the smallest version you can get of the 740. But one of the things that the Cadillac marketing said was I guess they argued about whether to call this car a CT7 or a CT6. And he said he did not want to have to read reviews where they were comparing the CT6 with the long wheelbase version of the 7 Series. And then saying, oh no, the CT6 isn't as long as the 7.
Right.
And so they didn't name it CT7, they named it CT6 because BMW only has the 6 Series, which is a shorter wheelbase car. It's a coupe version of the 5 Series is what the 6 Series is.
Oh, I see.
And so so let's see on the 7 Series if I can get it rapidly to tell me the wheelbase. Now it uses the 7 Series, the 740i uses 18-inch wheels with 245/50 rubber on them. And of course the 8-speed transmission, 0 to 60 in 5.5 seconds, so it's a nice runner. 4,300 pounds though, so it's going to be 4,310 pounds, so it's about 600 pounds heavier than the CT6.
Well, that engine's putting out more than any 300 horsepower if they're getting 0 to 60 in 5.5 seconds.
Yeah, generally that engine will put 330 or 340 horsepower, somewhere in that range.
Mm-hmm.
That BMW always kind of hedges on their. They don't do SAE numbers. Yeah, the long wheelbase version is 126 inches, but I'm not sure what the short wheelbase version is. So obviously something shorter than 126, but I'm not clear. But that's the 6 Series is 112 to 116, so it's more like an STS. And then the 7 Series is 120 to 126. So the CT6 is 2 inches longer than the short wheelbase 7 Series and 4 inches shorter than the long wheelbase 7 Series.
Right.
And they have 3 drivetrains, including one that's got to have great fuel economy with that 4-cylinder.
Now let's argue about that a moment, though. That for a given weight of car, is the 4-cylinder at the same power inherently more efficient than the 6? Because what we see in the current cars is not much difference, right?
What do you mean, efficiency and gas mileage?
Yeah, if you're going to make that much power,
Mm.
you know, the 4-cylinder is a little less powerful. It's 1/5 to 20% less powerful than the 6. But if you're going to, the argument I've heard is, if you're going to make enough power and you're actually comparing power to weight ratios side by side, then the 4 isn't that much more efficient because it has to work so much harder.
Exactly.
Well, it really
That's
depends. If they can't, I don't think they'd be offering if they didn't have a pretty good highway EPA on that drivetrain.
Yeah, now the 4 in the CTS is rated slightly higher than the 6, and I've been a fan of this 4. Well, if nothing else, you know, with my commutes, when you're sitting in rush hour traffic, a 4 is going to use less gas at idle than the 6 is going to, right?
Depends on the air conditioner.
But it is rated a couple of miles per gallon higher than the 4, and so we would expect that in the CT6 as well. Do you think that Cadillac's pricing strategy is wrong, where they're tying prices to which engine you buy? You know, so they'll say a 2 luxury premium, a V6 luxury premium, a turbo V6 luxury premium. Would they be better off actually tying the cost of the car to the cost of the engine? I think the 2-liter turbo probably costs slightly more than the V6 does.
Oh, probably. But I think it really depends on what they're trying to optimize. If they're trying to optimize market share, yeah, they ought to undercut people like Texas Jim says. If they're trying to maximize profits, or if they have a psychological reason like wanting to show that they get the same price as a roughly equivalent Mercedes or BMW.
But you can't make any profit till you get some market share.
Well, I was just saying that if what you're trying to optimize is not money, it's something abstract like that. I think that's not a very good objective, because you have to look at the future of the brand, the momentum, and so forth.
Exactly.
Yeah. So but I'm very aggressive. I would go out after market share. But the thing is, Cadillac has some marks that have people coming into the showroom. I think they're feeling like they're going to have people coming in to look at a CTS. They're going to show them an ATS, and if they're, a CS6, and if they're more of a CS6 person, they'll like it and they may buy it, or they'll bring in a friend that they think will like it, and this kind of thing. In other words, they're apparently depending on the existing models to bring the traffic to see the car in the showroom. Now that depends on the dealers stocking the car and having them available, which I think they will do. And it also depends on the people appreciating and liking it. Jim says, you say you like it, Jim.
I like the looks of it, yeah.
Have you gotten in one?
I haven't seen one, no. I've just seen the videos.
Oh, I see.
I've just watched the videos of it.
Well, get a good grip on your wallet and tighten your belt and button that button over your wallet. Go to a dealer and sit in one.
Now, you're talking about, which car are you talking about, Jim?
CS6.
Okay.
So sit in the CS6.
The
Be sure
CT6?
to bring your earplugs so that you get out without being too aggravated. And see what you think of the car, and then come back and tell us, because you're the man for that type of model. You can tell us what we need to know.
I do plan on driving one as soon as they come out.
Okay. That's right. There's a problem. So none
I
out
can't
there.
afford to buy one, but I will go window shopping.
Well, that's why you need the earplugs.
Now, BMW for this.
Go ahead, Bruce.
Yeah.
BMW for the 7 Series sells about 700 a month. So that would be the worthy goal for Cadillac for the CT6, is if they could sell about 700 a month. The S-Class the S-Class is the leader in this segment. The S-Class sells 1,566 a month. So that's what we're talking about, is if Cadillac's able to sell 1,000 a month, CT6s, that would be a good result.
Yes, it would.
So this is not going to drive the brand, right?
No, but it would drive a segment. And,
well, but what you're hoping is people come to look at the CT6 and buy an ATS or buy an SRX or buy an Escalade.
I think it's more the other way around. People come to look at the established brands, and they'll see the one that they didn't know enough to come to want to see. Although anything new, they're going to be people want to see it. But I think the bulk of the traffic is going to be people looking at cars that, that have market share.
Yeah, but what I'm saying is, if Cadillac wants to get to where they're selling 20,000 cars a month, like their competitors are doing in this segment, then it's not going to be of CT6s. If the CT6 is a raging success, they'll sell 1,500 a month.
But if they're going to be selling that many, they're going to have to do well in more than one segment. And that's certainly an important segment for Cadillac.
Yes, I absolutely agree. But the purpose of a flagship is to bring people into the showroom to test drive it, and then grimace that you can't afford to buy one, and then go buy one of the other Cadillacs, right?
Yeah, but that's what the CTSV and the ATSV will do. I mean, they're your halo car. But I do agree that Cadillac needs a good $80,000 world beater sedan.
Now the S-Class starts at $94,000. So the 7 Series starts at $74,000. The S-Class starts at $94,000. But the S-Class is the big dog in this segment.
Well, they don't have a car in that class right now. The CS6 is a smaller car.
The CT6 is smaller than the S Series?
Yeah. Well,
the CTS is. Yeah. The CTS is. The
CS6.
I'd have to go look at. I think the CT6 is slightly larger than the small wheelbase of the 7 Series, and I'll have to go check to see what the wheelbase on the S Series is.
Well, when I got seriously interested in El Dorado, I think it was like 94. I compared it to the Infiniti 32 valve V8 and the Lexus 32 valve V8, which are rare, exotic, and expensive, and you could get an El Dorado VAN9 for $48K. Now, inflation has scaled things since then, but the Cadillac was an incredible bargain for what it was. I just couldn't afford one that year. A few years later, I got one.
Yeah, same thing. The S-Class goes from 119 to 124 inches versus the CT6 is right in the middle. So what they've done is they've made the CT6 a bigger car than the S-Class or the 7 Series base, and smaller than the long wheelbase. So basically the CT6 will be slightly larger than a short wheelbase of the competitors, and the CT8 will be slightly larger than the long wheelbase of the competitors is what I would expect. But the CT8 will be on the same Omega platform and hopefully look more like the show car we saw 2 years ago, right?
Yeah, I would hope so, because I think that the stunning styling they had in the '90s cars and the 2002 CTS, you're not seeing these days. They're great looking cars, but they're not a car that anyone would instantly recognize as what it is, like the last model Eldorado, the '92 to 2002.
Now,
yes, yeah. Go ahead.
So no, go ahead. You weren't done with your thought.
Well, they had some Halo cars, the XTS, the Avanti, the not Avanti,
Alante.
Alante, yeah, and these were great Halo cars, and I think that having also the DeVille had a distinct profile and appearance for many years. It evolved and they changed it, but they still when they would update the body, like in '98, it was still recognizable as a DeVille. And so and that platform had something I'm not sure they're doing anymore. It had the separate subframes that you mounted the suspension on front and rear that gave you smoothness and quietness and freedom from vibration that you couldn't get any other way without impacting handling or chassis rigidity. I'm not sure they do that anymore. They may have another way of doing it. It's a lot of people do very good with smooth, quiet cars without those extra subframes, and it's an expensive way to build a car.
Now, for our market in the United States, how big a deal is it to you that the rear seats on the CTS are going to recline, are heated or cooled, have their own controls, or have vibration features? How important is that to you buying a car?
I don't think we. Yeah, go ahead, Jim.
To me, it's zero.
Because that's the grandkids are going to use those features, right?
I don't have any grandkids.
But you see what I'm saying, though, is the only people that are going to be. I'm not getting driven anywhere in my CT6.
I think they do need heating and cooling, but they can do it by just putting the AC duct so that the car cooling system ventilates the seat back and seat bottom the way they do the front seats.
Just use the Peltier like they do now.
If they want seat heaters, yeah. They put the other
I like the
feature. That's the simplest way to do it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
But it's not something that I would pay extra for, I guess, but it's an interesting feature. I'm the most excited about the all-wheel drive systems, the twin turbo 3-liter that's coming, 400 horsepower, 400 foot-pounds of torque, and the rear steering. I think the rear steering is interesting because we haven't seen that in the Cadillac sedans yet.
Now, did you get my note about the Chevrolet pickups?
I did, that they'd had that in the Chevrolet pickups, but people liked it, but it was expensive.
Correct.
But does that make the car feel more agile? Have you driven a car with rear steer?
Yes, I've driven one. I drove one. I loved it. And it would, now it only operated when you were going slow.
Mm-hmm.
It didn't operate, at 70 miles an hour. It only operated when you were going slow. But the maneuverability of it, and at that time I had a full-size Chevrolet pickup, but mine did not have that. A friend of mine bought one that had it and made me want to go trade my new one in, which was foolish, of course, so I didn't. But heck, it drove almost like a Volkswagen.
Wow.
It was so quick on, I don't mean jerky, lose control quick.
Responsive.
But responsive,
Yeah.
And parking it. You could parallel park it so easy compared to a standard pickup. Because the wheels, when you were backing up and start turning, they all turn. So it would turn, if you're backing into a parking place, it turns real quick, and to pull up, it does the same thing.
Yeah, the rear end would actually steer instead of just have to rotate the whole car about the center of the rear axle.
Correct.
Yeah.
and it was just really neat. I did like it.
Every
And
CT6 is going to be all-wheel drive. Are you guys excited about that?
I think it's a good
I
idea.
love the technology, and especially if they're doing it for the low weight, then there's no penalty, right?
What do you mean doing it
there's
for the low
always a
weight?
penalty with all-wheel
Yeah.
drive.
Yeah, but they're bringing it in at less weight than the CTS, even though it's all-wheel drive.
Wonderful.
But all of them are not going to be all-wheel drive.
I think almost every. I think the average CT6 is going to be all-wheel drive.
It's going to be standard equipment then.
Yeah, I think it is. It's going to be all-wheel drive with the 60% bias to the rear wheels and 40% to the front wheels.
Yeah. Standard way of doing things.
And everyone would be an 8-speed automatic, the new GM 8-speed automatic, not the one they're putting in the
CTS.
CTS.
Then ATS.
Yeah, that's what I was trying to think of, was the CTS V Sport, and then the rest of the CTSs. They didn't sell enough V Sports, so they had enough transmissions to go around for the rest of the CTSs. So, what do you make of Cadillac's kind of looking up at this point, at a time when we thought that Cadillac was going to be selling more cars than ever? Because 2 years ago, I would have, what I was writing in my blog on Cadillacs was, as soon as we get the ATS out, they're going to sell 5,000 a month of those. The CTS will hold up at 2,500 or 3,000, even with the new pricing. They'll still be moving some XTSs at 2,500 of those. And here we are 2 years later, and they can't sell any ATSs.
Well, what do you mean by can't say any? How many are they selling a month?
The ATS is barely scratching the surface. They're selling just over 2,000, I think.
Well, that sounds good to me.
Yeah, it's much lower than what they need to sell.
But,
yeah.
But I think 5,000 would have been the grabbing the brass ring. I think that's
but their competitor, the 3 Series, 4 Series, that's exact to the inch, a similar car to the Cadillac ATS, is selling 14,000 a month.
Well,
the market's there.
You don't waltz in when somebody's dominating a market and just take over the market in 1 year with a good model, no matter how good it is. That's a fact of life.
Yeah, right. But only selling 1,000 a month. That's
2,000 a month.
Not good.
Yeah, well, 2,000 a month. That's admittedly if there's 16,000 cars a month selling in that segment, and they're only selling 2,000. No, that's not as good as you would expect after 2 years. But still,
excuse me, just a minute. I'll be right back.
Okay.
Yeah, the ATS in February sold 2,028. And meanwhile, BMW has been selling more than ever. Well, Cadillac also said this week that the ATS won't get a refresh now. It was probably one and done. We'll see other hybrid technology. We may see another voltaic setup, but we won't see another ELR. I'm sorry if I didn't say ELR. The ELR is probably one and done.
Yeah.
Yeah. The ELR was due for a refresh. We were expecting it at the last show before the New York show, and now they're saying no. The Volt just got a refresh, got a little more miles and a little different engine. So we were expecting an ELR update to go with the Volt update. The Volt update was actually disappointing, but we were expecting an ELR update to go with the Volt update, and now Cadillac's saying, no, the ELR is probably done. We won't be coming out with a replacement that's a small, subcompact, front-wheel drive, extended range electric car again. Now we will see at the Shanghai show, they're saying the CT6 hybrid will show there at the Shanghai show.
CT6 hybrid. Now that's that's an interesting development.
Now, would you have split that up? And is that playing to the Chinese market? Is waiting and having a major announcement at the Shanghai show?
I think obviously it is, yeah.
And that may be where they're hoping they're going to move more CT6s, right? Because it's obviously set up to be chauffeured.
Well, the Chinese market's bigger than the U.S. market for luxury cars right now.
They're also big for the chauffeur-driven cars.
Yeah,
Yeah.
but it's also a defended market where China wants you to manufacture in China. If otherwise there's a high tariff for
Hmm.
imported cars, and so the CT6 isn't going to be made anywhere except Hamtramck.
Yeah.
Now that's the good news is because the Volt didn't sell that well and the ELR didn't sell that well, the factory space is open at Hamtramck, and the CT6 can move in there instead of into Lansing Grand River.
Well, I had good experience with the Hamtramck cars. That's a great plant. They do good work.
That was the home of the '90s Cadillacs,
Yeah.
exactly. And then beginning with the CTS and the revised SDS and so on, everything's come out of Lansing Grand River.
Hmm.
Weren't the 80s built in Hamtramck?
The which?
The 80s?
Yeah, I agree. Hamtramck GM had the vision that this was going to be their great innovative robotic factory, and Hamtramck never really hit stride with the way the robots were supposed to work and the level of automation that they were hoping for, and so they kind of struggled with that a bit. And I don't think Hamtramck ever got to where they were hoping. But what they learned from that is the flexible assembly line and the flexible assembly approach that they have now. That at Lansing Grand River, you can make an SRX, not the SRX, so the SRX is made somewhere else, but you can make an ATS, you can make a CTS, you can make the STS when they were making STSs would all roll down the assembly line one after another. You didn't have to switch over to ATSs and make a batch of 100 ATSs and then
Hmm.
stop and reset and make a batch of 100 STSs, that they could run as a flexible assembly line where they can run any of the models that are ready to go through that process
Well,
down the line one after another.
they probably gave up automation for flexibility. In
Absolutely.
that plant. So it's really just what you expect to do with the plant. If you have a bunch of cars that sell lower volumes, but you have a lot of different models, that's probably a better production model for total cost of labor and production than something that's totally automated, but you can't build but one model. But that'd be good for building Chevrolet Malibus, but not for CT6s.
Yeah, where you're going to sell 200,000 of them a year, right?
Yeah, right.
And so you need max production. So we're
Yeah.
expecting three SUVs to replace the XTS. So we're expecting a smaller than the XTS, which would be perhaps be an XT5. I'm sorry, I'm saying XTS when I should be saying SRX. We're expecting a smaller than the SRX, which would be the SR3, an SRX replacement, which would be the SR5, and a larger than SRX, which could be an SR6 or an SR7, based on the new big GM crossover platform. Are those cars that you guys would be interested in? Vehicles that you guys would be interested in?
Yeah, for the wife, not me. But then you know who
Well,
I am.
I've driven a couple of SRXs
Hmm.
for, sometimes 3 or 4 days at a time.
Hmm.
And I had one when I was still working. So I parked my van and used it as my work vehicle, just to get used to it, to see how I liked it.
Right.
And I liked it pretty well.
Yeah, I've heard that they drive
And
like a dream.
I like the size that it is. I don't think I would like one bigger, even though normally to me bigger is better. But the SRX seemed to be just the right size. It
And
was small enough that you could get into a parking lot and park it reasonably easy, but it wasn't so small that I felt cramped up in it.
it has that
And
cool OLED dash, which I'm a big fan of. The way the dash is done in the SRX is it's a wonderful piece of electronics. Now the SRX, by the way, is selling 5,000 a month, and it was, I don't know if you remember, but the SRX was they had crossovers were doing well. They had a crossover platform for other, it's a kissing cousin car to some other GM vehicles, but it made a nice Cadillac. When I did my test review of the SRX, I was fully expecting to be very don't care about it, and I really enjoyed driving it.
I did too.
So it makes perfect sense to me that Cadillac would say, hey, let's look at what's working and let's go make some more of those.
I like it too, particularly when they're offering a smaller one and a larger one, and I think they ought to look at a hybrid version.
Absolutely. I'm hoping that they'll come out with more hybrids and extended range Cadillacs, because I like that approach. But I'm also excited about the new cars coming out with the start-stop and with the cylinder deactivation.
Oh, absolutely. Variable valve timing, cylinder deactivation, and you've got a humongous range of capabilities in the same drivetrain.
That I spend a great deal of my commuting time, either at a drive-through waiting on somebody to go through, or at a stoplight, or at a, stopped. And so the start-stop technology, which just shuts off the engine whenever you stop, and then as soon as you begin to go again, turns the engine back on, seems perfect for city commuting.
Yeah.
I'm not gonna talk bad about it because I haven't driven one with that. But just the general idea of it, that I'm sitting there at the light turns green, I hit the gas, and it has to start before it goes. I just don't like the concept.
I think it ought to start.
I'm not gonna just dismiss it out of hand because I have no experience and nothing to base my dismissal on except just I don't think I like it.
I see Texas Jim sliding that car into neutral and flooring the gas and revving the car up a few times right before the light turns green and then sneaking it back into gear.
I think it ought to start when you take your foot off the brake.
I think that's what they do, is once you take your foot off the brake, it starts. And so you could actually, if you're paying attention, I am guessing that you could make sure the engine starts before the light turns green.
And also, when it's starting, the PCM is going to put the transmission in neutral, regardless of where your stick is, while it's starting. So I kind of think that it's going to have that kind of smarts to work well. But Jim's got a point. If you are the kind of guy that say you're on an upgrade when the light's red and you're holding the left foot on the brake and the right foot on the accelerator, how is that going to work for you? And I think the answer is poorly.
So we'll see. Hopefully they've got all the bugs worked out of it and it will work flawlessly. But I'm looking forward to that. I like the cylinder deactivation, and hopefully they'll have the interface will show you how many cylinders it's running on at the moment, right? That it will constantly tell you.
My 81 Fleetwood Brougham did.
Yeah.
It would show you whether it was 4, 6, or 8.
Yes. And that's what I'm hoping the new cars will do, is they'll have a place on the panel that tells you what's going on. Because cars I've driven that had, GM cars that had cylinder deactivation, the Escalade has this, and it would do that. It would show you in the display, hey, I'm running in V4 mode now instead of in V8 mode.
I don't see why not. It's your computer. You can do with it what you want, and the computer controls that, so it also controls the display should you be in that screen.
Now, we're expecting the CT6 and its successors will take us more into the age of autonomous driving, and we've seen some of those features already show up. The radar cruise control and the new lane keeping features that Cadillac's talking about, where the car actually steers to the lane. My car will warn me if I go out of the lane, but it doesn't steer. The new cars are going to start steering you back into the lane.
Now the 2015 XTS I drove the other day, it didn't quite steer you into the lane, but as you've got your hands on the wheel, if you start getting over there close to it, it actually tugs the wheel a little bit.
That's what it's doing. It's steering you back.
it don't actually turn it, but it nudges you to, to tell you, hey, you're not where you're supposed to be.
Wake up, dummy.
Yeah. Kind of like your tire's running over dots. It's just doesn't take the dots. Doesn't need the
Yes.
dots. Yeah.
Yeah, but it does it before you get to the dots.
Yeah. Good. Yeah.
Yeah, when I told my wife the new cars, my car beeps when you get on the edge of your lane. I told her the new cars vibrate the seat on the right side or the left side as a form of input.
Too.
She said, good, because I'm tired of hearing that beep. That you're the only one that needs to know that. So let's vibrate your seat and stop beeping.
Yeah.
Yeah, my DTS has the beep, but I turned that off.
Okay, so if we get to $74,000 and you had your choice between an ATS-V or a CT6 V6, $74,000, you had your choice between an ATS-V or a CT6, which way would you go?
I'd probably go CT6. I would miss the performance of the ATS-V, but I would go more for the comfort and the ride.
That certainly ought to have a big enough trunk and enough room in the back seat to fold up your wheelchair and set it back there, right?
Exactly.
And it looked in the pictures, it looked like it has plenty of room in the rear seat.
Yeah.
Cadillac, Jim, what do you think? ATS-V or CT6?
Oh, I think I would take the ATS-V. Yes, I would.
Why?
Because the handling of a car is the most important single thing that to my driving satisfaction, longevity of having a car, more than a few months. The handling is the most important thing to me. And the ATS-V has unmatched handling. The CTS-6 is oriented toward a different market, and it's going to have a far better ride, but it's not going to have the world-class handling of the ATS.
Certainly, the ATS-V is going to be, a track star. It's going to be, it's actually going to weigh more than a CT6. The ATS-V will weigh slightly more than a CT6
That's
because of the performance iron, right? That it's going to be, I think, around 3,900 pounds. So it's actually a couple of hundred pounds bigger, heavier than the much larger CT6 is.
Well, in the older GM products, they actually use chassis flex as part of the mechanism for smooth ride. In my CTS-V, the chassis is the most rigid in any car I've ever had.
Now, I apologize. The ATS-V, GM said Cadillac has said is 3,700 pounds, and the CT6 they've also said 3,700 pounds. Roughly. So as far as we know, they weigh the same, an ATS-V and a CT6. Yeah, and the ATS-V will have more power than the CT6 in any configuration.
Yeah. Well, the ATS-V is the main one I'd be interested in, of course, because that's going to have the best suspension as well as the best engine.
What I was trying to say is the ATS-V will have just one powertrain, 455 horsepower. The CT6 could have 265 or 335 or 400, but it will never have as much power. And unless we see a CT6 V-Spec, V-Sport, or a CT6V, which they've said we could see, a CT6V, then now the CT6 is still missing the big engine that is supposed to get a turbo 4.5 liter V8, which makes 450 horsepower. And that's the one that slots in above the twin turbo 3 liter 6.
Well, that may be the answer for the CT6. I kind of think that 400 horsepower is going to be the 0 to 60 5.5 second range car that we need to be, the king of the hill in that segment. It
won't. It'll be under 5 seconds. The CT6. I'm predicting the CT6, and here's my argument: the 420 horsepower CTS V-Sport is a 4.5 second car. And the CTS V-Sport weighs more than the CT6.
Gotcha.
So a 400 horsepower CT6 should be a 4.5 second car.
Well,
Especially since it's all-wheel drive, it may be a 4-second car.
well, I've been thinking 4-gear transmission, so you're probably right. I see where you see your logic.
Now,
So, go
but
ahead.
it won't ever get under 4 seconds, which is where, probably where the ATSP will be.
Well, it's very difficult to get a car under 4 seconds, 0-60 under 4 seconds. There's very few that do that, and all of them that have a drivetrain that's explicitly designed to do that, among other things in some cases, but it's hard. Did I ever tell you? Oh, I think I did, but I was off. We weren't live at the time. The fastest 0-60 time ever recorded by car and driver was 2.5 seconds. It was John B. DeLorean driving a 1965 Pontiac Catalina with steel wheels. So I had a picture of it.
Oh, that was the Super Duty 421.
Quite likely.
Well, yeah, that's aluminum front end, aluminum bumpers, aluminum hood, aluminum front fenders.
Yeah, and then there was some stuff that they didn't tell car and driver about, some of the stuff too.
Wasn't necessarily stock.
Yeah, they might. Yeah, no, you could buy one for the street.
Yeah,
but you could go down to the Pontiac dealer and buy one.
Not tuned the way that the test one was.
Not just like the one John B. DeLorean had at the car mag and wouldn't let anybody else get in.
I like that Junior Johnson. They disqualified him after one NASCAR race because he was head and shoulders above everybody else on the track, and they did a post-race inspection and discovered he had an illegal engine. And he said it was worth it because he just wanted to have one race where he just outran everybody. And he knew that they'd catch him at it. It was clearly he was the class of the field that day. But just to spend the whole day just driving past everybody was well worth the getting disqualified at the end.
Well, when I was a kid, the way they did it is they would bore every cylinder except number one. So when they checked the displacement on number one, they say, "Yep, it passes."
It wouldn't run over the dam, but it
ran great. It was great. You had
don't all the cylinders prefer to be the same displacement?
That's an aesthetic thing which has no reality in a real iron motor. You could take a 396 and bore it out to 427, except for one cylinder. You'd have like 420 cubic inches running in the class with a 396. So they'd run a little rough. Hell, they all run a little rough.
Right.
And
yeah, after you put a cam and everything in them.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. So, and then they just check the displacement on number one, and look at that. It's a 396. There you go.
Now, is the CT6, Cadillac keeps saying they're reinventing themselves.
No.
Is the CT6 a completely different car than Cadillacs of yore? Are they really starting over, or are they really going back to the 1957 Eldorado, when the Eldorado first came out, and it literally was, it cost so much you couldn't buy it, but it really literally was head and shoulders above anything else and almost handmade.
I think that's the $80,000 or $100,000 Halo car, and they don't have one right now. And no, the CT6 isn't.
And they're bringing the CT8, which is going to be even more expensive. Mm-hmm. I think the real question is how they price the CT6.
Yeah.
If they price the CT6 at, started at $60,000 for the 2-liter turbo, and then $70,000 for the V6, and $80,000 for the twin turbo V6, I think that is a hard to resist car. If they say, I'm going to price the 2-liter turbo at $74, and then you're all the way up at $90 for the V6 and $110 for the twin turbo, then I don't think they're going to sell. I don't think they're going to sell.
I don't think they're going to sell a four-cylinder for $74,000. I really don't.
They'll shoot themselves in the foot if they try that.
Yeah. 60, 60 would work.
I would say that's, to me, the attractive mnemonic there, that the CT6 starts at 60,000 and the CT8 starts at 80,000.
Yeah.
Would be very attractive. Figure out a way to sell the 2-liter CT6 for 60,000.
Exactly.
And I think that's a very attractive car for people that don't care which engine it gets, that they want good fuel economy and they want every luxury feature.
Or if they just want a nice, quiet car that they're not going to be taking out at 80 mile an hour all day up in the New Jersey Turnpike or something like that.
I did. The Cadillac dealers right now kind of, back when the STS offered the Northstar, the rear-wheel drive Northstar, or it offered the V6, the Cadillac dealer said there's no reason for them to have the V8 anymore because the Northstar was only making 320 horsepower and the V6 was making 304. And they said the Northstar is only there for people that just insist on having a V8, but there's no reason to have it. I was doing an analysis of modern Cadillac engines, and I need to post the article on this topic, but I think what it shows is the Northstar V8 in its 270, 300, 320 horsepower is the very best entry-level Cadillac engine of the last 2 decades.
I agree with that.
What people don't understand is the V6 makes good power at 6,800 RPM or 7,400 RPM in the next iteration, but it doesn't make near the torque that the Northstar made.
Oh, the Northstar.
500.
The Northstar.
500 RPM is where most people are driving, not 6,000.
Yeah, you could drive a Northstar spiritedly with 1,500 to 2,500 RPM if you wanted to.
And that's what these graphs show is basically until you get to 5,500 RPM, the Northstar is always better than the modern V6, and it doesn't matter whether you're talking about the LY7, the LLT, the LFX. We haven't seen the graphs on the LGX, but it's always better. And the 2-liter turbo is the same power output up to 5,000 RPM as the V6. The V6 only makes more power than the 2-liter turbo above 5,500 RPM. Where the turbos, run out of air. Now, all that said, where the modern cars have an edge over the cars from 10 years ago, the front-wheel drive cars or the rear-wheel drive Northstars, either one, where the modern cars have an edge is they're much lighter. And so where the ATS with a V6 weighs 600 pounds less than a DTS, then the power to weight ratio for the ATS with the 300 horsepower V6 overcomes the power to weight curve of a DTS with the 300 horsepower V8 much sooner at around 4,000 RPM.
Well, what do you think a 4.5 liter V8 with VVT and still deactivation would do in a CT8 as a standard engine, and then offer a twin turbo as a premium engine for like $95K?
And so there's a good question. What would a 4.5, if the 4.5 twin turbo makes 450 horsepower, would the 4.5 without the twin turbo make 350 horsepower?
Oh, I don't think that's a challenge at all.
No, the 4.5 with twin turbos ought to be good for close to 600.
I know, but Cadillac's only saying it makes 450.
Well, the VIN Northstars made 65 horsepower per liter. Which in their 4.5, that's slightly less than 4.6. So you can figure 290 horse is an easy shot for a 4.5 liter V8. And since if you do direct injection and taking advancements in the cylinder heads and so forth, that was getting more like 320 horse out of that same engine, basic engine concept. I think you're talking about 320 horsepower. Maybe a little more with direct injection. So I think, and that's normally aspirated.
Well, yeah, the 4.6 liter V8, the 4.6 liter Northstar made 320 horsepower. So I think we're perfectly safe to say a 4.5 liter V8 without the twin turbo could make 350 horsepower. With the new gadgets.
Yeah, direct injection.
So to answer your question, what would that 450 horsepower V8 look like in an ATS V Sport or an ATS V instead of the twin turbo 3.6 liter?
Well, yeah, that's 350 horse. 350 horse.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think.
So I don't think the ATS has a purpose for a 350 horsepower engine.
I don't think they're going to be putting that 4.5 liter V8 in an ATS. I think they'll be putting it in the CT6 or CT8.
Make that the base engine in the CT6 instead of the 2-liter
I
turbo.
think it might be the base engine in the CT8.
Do you think the 2-liter turbo is a mistake in the CT6?
Yes.
Well, it depends on the performance. I haven't driven one. It sounds kind of wimpy to me for a Cadillac, but I haven't driven one.
It wouldn't even be
on the docket.
Assuming I was still working, still making money like I used to, and I was in the market for a CT6, the 4-liter would be 100% out of the question. It just would not happen.
The 4-cylinder 2-liter.
I wouldn't even be interested in taking one out and driving it to see.
And this is not a car. This is not a car where they need a big range for the CT6. So I think they should have just said the CT6 is only going to be the twin turbo 3-liter V6 for 400 horsepower, 400 foot-pounds of torque, and that's the only CT6 they make. And then if they make so many of them that they don't have enough engines, then offer other engines.
Well, there's something unique about that CT6 4-cylinder, or they wouldn't be offering it. And I think it's got to have a 35 mile a gallon ETA highway or something.
I bet you what they're thinking is they sell every car that way. The 2-liter is the entry level, the standard car, and then the V6, and then the high performance. And they're not thinking, well, we're only going to sell 500 CT6s a month. And so they all need to be ultra premium, right? There should be no such thing as a non-premium CT6. Correct. This is their premium car.
That's the premium car.
And so I think both those engines are a mistake.
It should be just like when you used to you could go buy a DeVille, you could buy a DeVille DeElegance, you could buy a Fleetwood, which had just about everything that the DeVille DeElegance did. And then you could buy the Fleetwood DeElegance. So there was only 2 models of Fleetwoods. You had the Fleetwood and the Fleetwood DeElegance. Period.
And that's what I think they should do with the CT6 is I think it's a mistake to bring the 2-liter turbo or the V6. I would make, especially maybe for the first year, I would make every CT6 a barn-burning twin-turbo, 400 horsepower, 400 foot-pounds of torque, all-wheel drive monster car.
I've seen very few people that ever complained that, oh, I can't drive that car. It's got too much power.
I never heard any complaints on that.
And 400 horsepower is not as much as it used to be, right? I mean, more and more cars are breaking the 400 horsepower. So I'm not even sure. If I had said to you, Texas Jim, we don't want to spend $5 million coming out with a new twin-turbo V6, so we're going to take the 460 horsepower LT1 engine, which cost us nothing to make. We're going to take the 460 horsepower LT1 V8, and we're going to put that in your CT6, and you don't get a twin-turbo. You get a twin-turbo V6. You get the same LT1 that's in the Corvette.
I'll say that's cool.
Would that have ruined the CT6 for you?
Yes.
What did they sell that was essentially that type of car? The Fleetwood, the 90s Fleetwood. They sold it with the old small block and then the LT1, the original LT1.
And the LT1's making 460 horsepower.
That would be nice, and also it's going to have a lot of torque.
And it's got cylinder deactivation, and it's got fuel it's got direct injection. So, and it's got to cost less than this developing a brand new twin turbo V6 that you're only going to sell $500 a month.
Yeah, I can drive my car all day, including the high-speed commute that never gets over 2,200 RPM.
So why are we developing a brand new V8 to go with the brand new V6 to go in the new car? Why don't we just use, is the LT1's? Do you think they would get so much grief that the LT1 is a big, rough, small block Chevy that they can't?
The LT1 is not rough.
Well, he's just speaking metaphorically. It's crude, like
Well, that's what the magazines. The magazines say this is just a truck engine, and so Cadillac never should have put. That's what the magazines would say is Cadillac never should have put a truck engine in their luxury car. And so I know that's why what they're thinking is in going to bespoke engines, that this new twin turbo 3-liter is only going to be a Cadillac engine. The new 4.5-liter twin turbo is only going to be a Cadillac engine.
Well, people with attitude are people with attitude. If you got time for another 60 story from me,
Sure.
I ran my.
I got 2 minutes.
I used to run my
I'm
66
gonna have
Sport
to get off
27
there.
Corvette in hill climbs,
Right.
run by the Texas folks, and they were a bunch of cars who liked B and C model cars, 2-liter and under, and they thought the Corvettes were just American big iron, big engine, little car, and not a sports car. And I was out there one time, and I didn't really prepare that car much. I drove it to the track, and I had 67 Corvette 7-inch rims with street Michelins on it, and new plugs, and that's really all I did to prepare the damn thing. And I was sitting out there waiting, and we had a downpour, and I swear a downpour where you couldn't see 100 feet. And normally they just wait till the weather clears, but I was chucked up with that big black Corvette, and they dropped the damn checkered flag on me. Well, I went ahead and went, and I turned a 43, and one of those guys that was supposed to be observing up on the curve just past the switchback was running out on the track whenever I was running and standing in my line, so I had to drive around him. And he was standing in my line when I came out of that switchback. I had to drive around him, and in the rain, I lost traction and fishtailed all the way to the finish line. Well, I turned a 43. That was like the 6th best time that had ever been turned on that track in any weather. And when they announced the time, the whole place went silent for about 30 seconds. I heard that when I got back around.
I've got to run. My wife's calling me.
Okay.
Thanks for being on, Jim. Good to see you.
Okay, see y'all next week.
Okay, see you next week.
Cadillac Jim, any last thoughts about the CT6
I think that
the retirement of the modern Cadillac?
I think that 4.5 V8 has the advantage of it's going to offer better breathing, better economy, lower emissions, and it just may offer a better solution for the CT6.
And I'll wait and see. And of course, I drive a car with a bespoke Cadillac engine in it, so I'm the last one to complain that bespoke Cadillac engines are the wrong way to go. The allure to me of putting the Corvette engine in is always that there's going to be a huge aftermarket for performance parts.
Mm-hmm.
For the LT1 or the LT4. And of course, if you want a Cadillac with an LT4 in it, GM offers that because the 2016 CTSV will have, a 640 horsepower LT4 in it.
Well, there's also something that seems to be lost on most people, including the intelligentsia of the automotive community, and that is that the LS and the new LT two-valve heads breathe as well as a lot of 4-valve heads that have been put out there in high-performance cars over the years, including recently. So, it's there, and it's holds the manufacturers' championship in the Pirelli World Challenge for the last 3 years, and so the people have their attitudes. There's nothing you can do.
Well, and we'll see. These may be wonderful engines once they get here. It's just I have such respect for the LT1 and the previous generations of that V8 that it frustrates me that GM would spend millions of dollars developing replacement engines that they know they're only going to sell a few hundred of a month.
Well, I would say that we don't know what that 4-cylinder is going to look like till you drive one. We don't know what that 4.5-liter V8 is going to look like. They have something in mind. I think the Roger Smith years, when they would just do a drag and drop auto design and came out with terrible things like the 73 Pinto with automatic transmission that would not go over 45 miles an hour. That was a Ford, but all of the makes did blunders like that. I don't think they're doing that anymore. I think that
we should also
there's something in mind, and we just don't know what it is.
Well, we should also mention in the Chinese market, a 2-liter turbo gets the better tax treatment, and so the 2-liter may actually be intended for the Chinese market, and all the ones that we see on U.S. dealers may have the twin turbo V6 and the normally aspirated V6, and we may never see a 2-liter turbo on a U.S. dealership. Yeah,
that sounds very, very rational, and that could be the answer. You didn't bring that up earlier, and I hadn't thought of it.
So,
That might
okay,
be
Jim, thank you for being on. It's good to see you.
good to be here.
I think this worked okay with putting the topics on the forum, even some of them were dated ahead. And I'll do the same thing tomorrow as we'll post a new thread and start collecting topics for next week that we want to touch on.
Yeah, we need more troops out here if those questions are going to be open. We need more than Trace Bobos rattling our cages here.
We've got the Q&A up, and what Jim is talking about is if you ask a question on YouTube or if you ask a question on Google+, that it actually shows on our screens here while we're talking. So if you don't have video display or you don't have a microphone or you're shy and you don't want to be on the video, you can text us in questions and take part in the conversation that way. Yeah. You can also actually join the event and take part in the chat. Mm-hmm. Which is a little different thing. It works kind of like IMing and so on, but that way you'd be in live chat here with us, even if you weren't on the video. Yeah. Any last words for our audience tonight, Jim?
Good evening.
Okay, thanks for watching. Jim, thanks for being on. Texas Jim, glad you were able to be on. All you other guys that we invite every week, show up, bud.
Yeah.
Stand by.